So fun fact, this game is actually designed by the brother of William Brown, the Hungry Gamer, and I'm friends with the Hungry Gamer, although, to be fair, he did have me try and give my opinion on the game before ever telling me his brother designed it, so, I mean, take it with a grain of salt if you want. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Lunar Rush from Dead Alive Games. Lunar Rush is a... how do we even describe this? Across 7 rounds of play, you're going to be building out your own worker placement areas. You're trying to start off on the moon. You're trying to start off on the ground. You're moving materials to the moon. You're going to be bidding on various pathways to the moon. We'll get back more to that shortly, all while you upgrade your own lunar base in order to most efficiently build materials, keep your astronauts alive, and move those materials back down to Earth along those lunar pathways in order to sell them on the marketplace for as much money as possible as the market slowly gets less and less worthwhile, and do all that as efficiently as possible across 7 rounds of play. That's the high-level overview. Once again, taking a step back, you have 7 rounds of play, and in each round, the first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be bidding. Well, it's actually a full turn sequence over here, handy dandy little player aid, but you're basically going to be bidding on which pathways, which routes you want to take, because you're going to be going up to and down from the moon. What you're going to be doing over here is you're going to have multiple pathways, and you're bidding, you're going to be using your own little bid cards over here and secretly paying for them, and you're paying in victory points with a multiplier on those last rounds of play. So you're giving up points, and those points will get more and more impactful as you head in towards the end. Now, once you've determined who actually wins the bid, that player will go ahead and turn, or you're going to be placing out 2 ships, so to speak. 2 ships as you figure out the pathways you take. You see there's a few options over here. There's the slowest pathway, which will take you more turns to get to the moon, but it also lets you carry more goods. There's the medium pathway, which carries, a medium amount of goods, but takes only 2 turns instead of 3. And then you have the fast pathway, in which you can go ahead and only gather 2 items, but you get there in 1 turn, which means it's always a question of trying to figure out your bids so you can figure out just how fast do you want to get to the moon. This game is 7 rounds after all. How much time can you actually afford to take? Now, the game does take into account, we're getting a little technical here, but the game does take into account that as you move into the last rounds, you're going to start closing off the routes and getting different bonuses instead, because in round 6, taking 3 turns to get to the moon is just not helpful. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to choose 2 pathways. You're going to put down ships on those pathways, and then once you're done a full round of placements, you're going to continue doing so, and you can also choose the routes down, the routes up, as you try to figure out how you're getting to the moon. Now, why are you doing all this is a separate question, and that goes back to what we talked about already. You're trying to get astronauts and materials to the moon. Astronauts because they're your workers. They are your workers in this worker placement game, workers that can go down in a variety of spots to take a variety of actions to generate a variety of minerals and goods and all the various handy things we have over here. We have all the materials. We have life support, energy, aluminum or lunarium ore, lunarium metal, lunethyst shard, lunethyst gems, just a whole bunch of various goods you're trying to generate and or carry up and take care of all of that. Once the goods are on the moon, you're going to head into the moon phase over here, and there's a whole sequence over here. The Earth phase, you're going to be closing routes. If you need to, you're going to bid for the initiative. You're going to deduct your points. You're going to choose the routes to per player. You'll load the ships, and you'll move the ships. That's basically 6 steps to say, bid on tracks, move stuff to the moon, just with technical details. Then you move to the moon phase. In the moon phase, you're going to buy gold modules. Now, this is going to be one of those things where there's different aspects of the game that's very modular. This game has a bunch of modules you can mix in. One of those modules is the fact that you have these gold modules, which are basically cooler, better buildings that are publicly available in addition to the one that you have of your own color. There's a whole stack of these. You're going to be choosing a variable number per game, or 8 per game, as you go through this, as you try to figure out which gold modules are in play and which players want to pay for and place those modules in play. From there, you're going to go to drafting the moon wonders. This is again another bit of a module system over here, where you can go ahead and have these wonders over here, where you're going to place down wonders. It's 1 plus the number of players times 3. So like in a 2-player game, you'll have 9 modules in play, 9 wonders in play, and these wonders, what they're doing effectively is you're going to be building out 3 wonders. There's different sides to the wonders. You're going to be choosing the tops and bottoms depending on the exact terms. You're going to be choosing two of one and one of another type, and each one of these gives you different victory points. Now, these are only available in later rounds. They're not available the whole time, but you're going to start going for these, and these will give you modifiers that will give you giant chunks of points, depending on whether you can pair up what they are rewarding you for with what you're actually trying to do in the game. This is all the moon phase, and some rules that we're diving into as far as the modules, and I believe there's even more modules as well. This is actually a good time to say, probably said this at the beginning, this is a prototype. All rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and there's a link down below to the Kickstarter. I'll say that again later in the video because I definitely should have said that at the beginning. But either way, moving on from there, you're going to go ahead and build and produce on the general area over here. Where you're going to have the options, you're going to have the option of building out your own unique moon base. You're going to start with your own deck of cards that you can use as deck of cards to improve the various modules on the board, to improve their spots, to build over them, all of them giving you the various worker placement spots on the board, worker placement spots where you can place your workers in order to generate various things, in order to generate life support, which is important to keep your astronauts alive, because if you don't do so, you're going to lose 15 points per astronaut that dies, because death in space is bad. Death in space is very bad, so you're going to be mindful of that as well. But also, you're trying to get all the resources. You're trying to get all the resources, so you can have a whole resource conversion engine so you can build and improve the best possible resources, all with the goal of, as you move to the final step over there, where you load the Earthbound ships and move those ships back down to Earth so that you can go ahead and sell at the market. Now, the same way you're trying to get things to the moon as fast as possible so you can improve your stuff, so you can start building bases and doing all the fun things, you're also trying to bring them back to Earth as soon as possible so you can sell them at the market before the other players. If you can go ahead and get in those early sales of the lunethyst gems over here, you're going to get, 42 for the first sale, 40, 38, 36, all the way down to 28. The value is almost half by the end of that track, and so getting there first is important on all those tracks. On all those tracks, you're going to be trying to move things as fast as possible so that you can sell them, because selling them in the end game points where you just get points for resources, that's even further down. That 28 drops straight to 18 when you go to the end game points, so you really want to try to get in those sales as much as possible. And then finally, you move to the market phase, which is where you move those Earthbound ships, you sell the items we discussed, you advance the turn marker, and you go to the next round. And that is basically Lunar Rush. The rest of the details are in the technicalities. The rest of the details are in the fact that there's a whole solo mode we haven't covered. There's other modules that I believe are going to be in the final version of the game. There's all the various locations over here, all these things, what they do and the way they're managed, the placing down your workers, the goods you get, the types of cards you're going to have as far as building out building out and improving and upgrading your base, a whole bunch of other side things. But that is basically what is going on in Lunar Rush. Which brings us to the review part of the video, which is where, once again, I'll remind you that, first of all, this game, again, is designed by the brother of the Hungry Gamer. I'm friends with the Hungry Gamer. I played this game and gave an opinion on the game to him before ever knowing that was the case, but you should take that into account. And secondly, prototype, rules, components, all that stuff subject to change, and link to the Kickstarter down below. Start off in the bat with ease of play. The game is fairly easy to go through. This is prototype rules, and I was taught the game initially on TTS, which means I didn't even have to learn the game from the rules, so it's hard for me to overly analyze the rules themselves. I will say the game's sequencing is pretty simple. It's not simple in a bad way. It's a simple sequencing, and the play rate over here is fantastic. It goes through all the steps you need very clearly. The general idea is bidding to get onto bidding to figure out your pathways and your timing to get things to the moon, then paying resources to build out stuff on the moon to improve your engine, and then flying things back to sell at the market. This game combines a lot of things, but no individual step is innovative. At least I don't think so. And I'm not saying that critically. I'm saying that in a good way. The full package of the game is innovative, but no individual step is, and so it's pretty easy to follow sequencing. As far as game time, it comes in at roughly 60 to 90 minutes, a little closer to 90 minutes, although I could see that coming down as you continue to play the game. And table space is not bad. You have the board, you have these areas over here, and then you have this per player. So it obviously will be bigger than what you see over here, but just factor in this much extra per player, maybe a drop more. I try to be efficient when I'm setting it up on camera. As far as player count, this is a 1 to 4 player game. I have played this at 2 and 3 players. I have not played the solo mode, I have not tried it at all, and I have not played it at 4. I think for me the sweet spot is probably 3, but 2 is totally fine. This is a tight enough game in terms of there's enough stuff going on where you're competing over, but also enough stuff that you're doing that is really just building out your own engine, that while a third player was nice, 2 players was also fine. And I imagine 4 would be fine too, although maybe things get a bit more cluttered. I couldn't say for sure. They do have some spots that are 4 player only, so that does balance out. I'd have to play it at 4 to give an opinion there. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking. Starting off with just the mechanics that I talked about already, about how they're just solid mechanics that I enjoy, and they're being put into a singular package. Worker placement in general, I appreciate when there's a tension around worker placement. Now, the worker placement, to be fair, does lose some of the tension you might have in some worker placement because you're always doing so on your own areas. You're building out your own board. There's no competition for like a central worker placement area. There is competition in the game, make no mistake, but that competition does not exist in the worker placement engine. So yes, there's worker placement, but it's not really a competitive worker placement. On the other hand, there's competition over other things. There's competition over getting to the market to sell your goods first. There's competition over the various gold cards you're going to be using these for, and these cards which you're going to want to add to your own engine. There's competition for the various wonders you're going to be building. There's competition for the very bidding you're going for. So there's plenty of competition and interactivity in the game, and it gives you all that while giving worker placement. Again, the worker placement not as competitive as I would like there, but you're building up a solid tableau. You're improving your base. You're constantly trying to make everything as efficient as possible, getting this building and that building and moving all together and getting the resources you need to build the buildings and moving the resources back down to Earth to sell them. Every single thing you do in this game is a juggling challenge of the timing of the game, of the timing of what you're currently focusing on. You're currently focusing on building up your tableau. Are you currently focusing on liquidating, on selling? You're trying to balance all those things in the game, and the variable speed loads of the ship it give you that puzzle, that challenge every single time, combined with the market economy, because you're trying to balance everything. You can get more to the moon if you're willing to be patient, but that also means you're getting there in turn 3 instead of turn 2 or turn 1, and so it's a constant balance of every single aspect of the game. And building out your own worker placement areas. I like that. I like having a chunk of cards, both your own little deck and the gold cards, which again, there's tons of these. There's piles and piles of these cards, and they're completely different every single game, and they all give you a new way to approach what you're building on this moon, what you're trying to improve, to build, and managing your astronauts, managing pay for astronauts, all that things. And the fact that the game is modular, the fact that you don't need to play with these gold cards if you don't want to, you don't need to play with the wonders if you don't want to, you don't need to play with the various other things you're going to be introducing. We haven't even talked, one thing we haven't talked about is the faction or challenge cards as well, giving you either unique aspects to yourself, or giving you a modifier to improve the fact, or to balance the fact that you might have players who are better at the game. This game is chock full of modules to mix up the experience, both those that I've seen and played with, and those that I just vaguely know exist but haven't had a chance to properly play with. So there's a lot going on in this game. As far as things I don't like, the first thing is something that is, I don't know if it gets better with time. It may well get better with time. I will say it's already gotten better with the plays I've had, but I still don't love it. Which is the game has like 17 resources. Now, I'm exaggerating, it's not 17, but the game has a bunch of resources. You're going to have your habitation parts, your advanced machinery, your tech, your life support, your energy, your lunarium ore, your lunarium metal, your lunethyst shard, your lunethyst gem. And all of those, not only are there a lot, but they're not even following basic standards such as gold, silver, and bronze, which are things that we can more easily resonate in terms of our knowledge or perception of the value of a resource. And so you have a chunk of resources, and they all have different rules applied to them. Now again, the player areas are fantastic here. We have only from Earth or the moon, only on the moon, so it does break down some of the categories over here. And yes, over here, only the market only cares about 4 of them, the rest are being used for other factors, and so it does have these categories and these breakdowns, but when you first walk into this game, it takes a bit to get an idea or perception of all the various resources going on, and even as you play it more, I find myself constantly having to check the market track to get an idea for it. What I find is, I don't find that I can look at my cards, even now, in some exceptions, yes, for instance, going for the life support over here, that's pretty easy, I've got that locked in, but whenever I'm looking at the gems, I rarely look at a card and think to myself, you know what, I have a perfect idea of what this card is generating. I have a perfect idea of the cost, the benefit, the value. I don't have any of that. I just see a lot of icons, a lot of resources, and I have to look at the market board and constantly refresh and check myself to get an idea of what the cards are doing. And I'm still doing that multiple plays in where I'm still cross-checking. There's a lot of resources and they just don't fall into pre-established patterns that make it easy and absorbable. And I get the fact that you're on the moon, so maybe gold, silver, and copper just aren't thematic or appropriate, but I wish there was a better solution that more easily gave me the intuitive feeling of what they all are, instead of feeling like I'm still multiple games in, still figuring out that aspect. And secondly is the art and components for me, and this is prototype, again, very strong prototype warning here, but art and components and all that stuff is okay to me. I do not find myself compelled by the visual appeal of the game or the component appeal of the game. Now, components for sure, I know are being changed, so heavily take this aspect. This is one of the dangerous aspects of like reviewing or rating a game that's not a finished product. This is not a finished product. Take into account. But personally speaking, I don't find myself pulled in by the shine of the game. I find myself pulled in by the gameplay of the game, which arguably is a better thing, but still going to call it out. As far as things I can see others not liking, first of all, the interactive versus not interactive juggling. Meaning, on the one hand, your own personal player board is your own segregated thing, which is very non-competitive. Almost multiplayer solitaire as you build up your own tableau. But then there's also cutthroat and fighting over other cards, some of the modules, and then the bidding to get things. So this game has a weird mix of, in the one hand, it's more interactive than you might want for a game that is giving you a very solo multiplayer solitaire core engine over here. On the other hand, it's not, I'm trying to figure out how to say that. It's very solo. It's more, the point I'm trying to get at is mixes both multiplayer solitaire and a degree of interaction, which might make it not as much of a fit for someone who's looking for multiplayer solitaire, and not as much of a fit for someone who's looking for that level of interaction. It kind of has a little bit of both going on at the same time. And then secondly, and nitpickly wise, you're feeding your people. In this game, you are going to be feeding your astronauts. You have to manage that. You have to go ahead and pay for that. Not a problem for me. That's just part of the market economy of the game, but it could be a problem for, well, you if you don't like that. For me, I only don't like feeding and maintenance when it feels like it's 75% of what you're building, and that's certainly not the case here. It feels like a very minor part, but you're still feeding your people, so I'll mention that. As far as final thoughts on Lunar Rush. Final thoughts on Lunar Rush. I really like what Lunar Rush is doing with caveats. I really like the fact that, first of all, the variability is incredibly high in this game. The sheer amount of different things going on, the modules, the cards, the puzzle you can try to figure out as far as how you build up your tableaus. There's a lot of solid, fun things going on in this game, and it gives a high degree of tension as you try to figure out the timing of everything, what you're trying to go for, how much you're willing to pay for it, and then getting your cards and building out your base and gives you different ways of approaching that challenge. And then you also want to get your hands on certain gold cards and certain wonder cards and try to figure out the way that you can stack up 250 points worth of everything, as you, well, significantly more than that, as you try to figure out just how efficient you can be as you play through this game. There's a lot of fun things going on in this game. At the same time, for me, overall, while I like that game, it's also one I'm not completely sold on just yet. I've enjoyed my time with it so far, and I'm excited to dive back into it. It gives me a lot of fun things. The resource thing does bother me more than it should, and the fact that I'm not visually pulled into the game yet as well, those are factors of where I am for right now. For right now, I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. I do think this one goes up for me. I think this one goes up when I play the final game, when I dive back into it again, when I have the final production copy and all those fun things, and it's everything else is there. I think this one goes up, but for me, where I am right now, for right now, it's a 3.5 out of 5. A solid game, very enjoyable. I like the puzzle, I like the approach, I like the variability. Lots of solid things going on in Lunar Rush. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Honeybuzz. Honeybuzz has a degree of similarity as you both have worker placement and you're building out your own spots as you develop your hive. It has an interesting, not really the same because the worker placement's like a different zone, but it does have a degree of similarity in Honeybuzz. And then secondly, and I don't have a good explanation for this one, weirdly enough, it kind of gave me vibes of Tribune Inter Paramus, which is a game that I really love. It is kind of, to a certain extent, between the bidding, between the trying to manage the timing, between trying to get everything you want, between the worker placement. It did give me a little bit of Tribune vibes, while being very, very different when I think about the two games. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, have a good one.